in our communities and outside of our communities. In our communities in the urban area and communities up in Westchester and the surrounding world. We're having nurses calling from Skype, talk about how they treat freshly psychotic disorders. Like today, you have people entering a bus, and if they have a psychiatric break, the bus driver is protected federally, and that individual will get or receive a felony within the court system. A nurse, however, we receive patients fresh. EMS, they receive them fresh, and if we get hit where there's no felony charge, so we want to talk about how we handle them and how difficult it is for the handling of a person who has a psychiatric break, or if they're like disheveled and they haven't bathed, and the real serious and unseen portion to nursing we're going to make very transparent. We'll talk about how when people are experiencing a good thought and people are saying good things to them in their mind, opposed to bad things and telling them bad things in this part of the mind. And when this happens, or how confusing it gets, and that's why they hold their head and grab onto other things. We'll talk about the medications for that, how we treat them, how they're restrained, what the legalities are. We're going to talk about a lot of different events that happen in the nursing field, on a nursing level and not a medical level, in the sense that we have doctors who have talk shows. We'll now have nurses that will want to talk about the life-saving efforts that they take. The next topic that we'll talk about in the mental illness field is schizophrenia. The one after that, we'll talk about bipolarism. The third one will be psychoses. The fourth one will be depression, and the fifth one will be dementia. Schizophrenia, that's kind of obvious because you have the undifferentiated type that's very disheveled. I'll show you a picture of one individual who I've tried to get off the streets, and it's been very difficult because of the system and the present protections that they have, which is the dichotomy between the two. I always talk about that. Doesn't help the individual from, being helped with their psychoses. So bipolarism also, we'll talk about the depression that they have and the mania that they have, and how we handle it when it comes in fresh in the emergency room and to the floor when they're placed, or we're placed as a people of culture in different aspects of different hospitals. There's community hospitals, there's emergency treatment areas that you could be taken to as well if you have a psychiatric break in some hospitals. And then they have the state hospital that houses only the mentally ill from a mild to a forensic level. This is going to be new for me as well, just being in front of the camera and talking to our community about how to make things better in the healthcare field, how to utilize nurses as not necessary evils within the practice of medicine and in the practice of pharmacy. Nurses are a very integral part of the medical profession and how we help save lives. The depression is one of the key aspects that I want to key in on right now during this show before we end with dementia. Depression is one of those things that are given diagnosis of bipolarism today that I'm feeling very unnerved about. I think a lot of people are falling into financial depression. They have so many more needs before that. Talking about depression, there's so many people falling into depression, and the main reason for falling into depression is because of their finances. And what do we do with them now when we come to an emergency room? Let me give you some of the scenarios I've looked at. A person comes in to the emergency room and they say that I want to hurt myself because I feel like I want to hurt myself anyway because I can't seem to get through to anybody on some of the needs that I have. Some of those needs may be I lost my job, multiple losses. I lost a family member. I lost my apartment. So these people have a lot of losses, and yet they'll be housed in the same environment as people who have had psychiatric breaks for murdering someone or harming or hurting someone. These areas that they're placed in makes the depression sometimes even worse. So trying to get a handle on how to handle depression has been difficult as well, because you have people now that are middle class that are ending up in these areas and they're not able to go through the whole system, the systems that's up now, the protocols that are for us now in this system for depression. One of the first things that may be offered is medication. Sometimes medication is not the answer. Sometimes all depressed individual will need are those situations handled. And a hospital is not the place to handle them. What do you do then? How is it handled then? We'll talk about that. One of the, in this scenario that I'm giving about this one particular patient, they were unable to be handled because they had so many financial issues and so many legal issues that what they really needed was a lawyer, a good lawyer, a lawyer that they can trust and would not hurt them. We're going to talk about dementia. So when we get a patient in the emergency room, a lot of times the person has a mounting episodes, symptoms of mood swings, weight loss, and when they are slow thinkers, fatigued, you automatically know that these people are very depressed and that you need to get a handle, help them to get a handle on some of their coping skills. And, you know, like I said before, a lot of times they're legal, a lot of times they're financial today. And I tell you, I'm at a loss because you send them to some of the agencies and then they come back to you and they tell you on a continuum of what they've gone through. It can make you wonder whether or not our system is either working for them or failing. I'd love to hear some of the psychiatric nurses' point of view on this, because the repeated visitors to the emergency room, or when I do home care, they are hit with a lot of issues that they can't cope with. And you know, they're saying only the strong survive is not fair, because that's when people really need the help, is when they're weak. The strong can be weak as well, especially when they're hit financially. And shelter is a threat. Employment has been a threat, and it's rising. And you know, a lot of people who have is also feeling threatened by those who do not have anymore. So we'll be talking about dementia next, and nurses who specialize in that area as well, in the hospitals, clinics, and in welcome to the Mike Nurse Talk Show. I'm going to be interviewing a nurse that's already online, Mr. Smith, about psychiatric mental health nursing, the scope and the standards of practice in the emergency room. Mr. Smith, are you there?
I'm here.
Hi, I'm going to ask you, how you doing today?
I'm doing okay.
Good. What's your background? Can you give me a little bit about your background in emergency psychiatric nursing?
Well, I went to a nursing school, and the main focus of my training was to prepare nurses to take care of a psychiatric patient in a psychiatric hospital.
So basically, during nursing school, during your experience, was doing an internship, is what you're saying, in a psychiatric facility?
Exactly.
Right. And then you want to give us some more experience that you've gained?
Okay, I did inside nursing for 5 years, then I move on in becoming a supervisor, which entails covering the psychiatric department on and off door shift, and also as the caregiver and supervisor for the emergency room, which was also a designated psychiatric center for the city that I lived in.
So basically, you had worked in a community hospital
Exactly.
that had admissions from the emergency team EMS,
Yes, sir.
which you're saying that had BLS and ACLS calls. BLS meaning the minor calls for psychiatric care and the acute psychoses.
Exactly.
Right. And you supervised those areas.
Exactly.
How did you find the protocols to be effective in your areas of nursing and psychiatry? How effective was the outcome for your patients?
It was quite effective, knowing that we have no other alternative. We have to receive our psychiatric patients before we're given. We are given to that. The staff, they get orientation that would help them to focus on how to react in every situation.
Excellent. Excellent. I think what you're saying is the nurses were taught during their orientation, during preceptorship by you on how to respond and act through those protocols that were set by the standards of practice in your institution, the policies and procedures, correct?
Exactly.
All right. So what types of cases would you say were the acute emergency cases or the regular acute emergency cases that you received in your community hospital there?
Well, I would say I've seen it all from the schizophrenic, the bipolar, the psychosis, especially for drugs.
Oh, a lot of drug-related
And
psychoses.
patient.
Say that again?
And the depressed patient.
Right. Yeah. A lot of times the depressed patients that you talk about, where you're saying also had a lot of drug-addicted behaviors or admissions.
Yes, we do get a lot of drug addicted admissions, but the depressed patient is really the challenge for us because it's extremely hard to communicate with them because you're not getting a reaction from them.
Right.
You have to go down quite deeply in trying to figure out what's the problem that they're facing.
Right.
Facing at the moment.
Right. So, I find that the same thing, Mr. Smith, that the depressed patient is the most difficult patient in their acute phase of their illness.
Well, that's the time I get over-concerned because if something can really get frustrating, you're talking to a patient for 10, 15 minutes and you cannot get a simple answer that you're looking forward to make your diagnosis. And I can say a lot of times the psychiatrist or the emergency room doctor has the same feeling because you don't know if you're going or you're coming with the patient.
So basically, you're giving a comparison from what I'm hearing
Exactly.
that the medical profession as well, with the depressive disorders, to diagnose a clinical depression, is difficult because of the difficulty in the patient's ability to express exactly what's happening to them in that depressed state.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I found that too. I found that as well when I was working in a community hospital. Depression was one of those either obscure behaviors that you could either end up judging it or having a long time before you can reach the actual reason for that depression. Right.
Because remember now, we want to make sure that we give the patient the right diagnosis, and we don't want to treat the patient. We don't want to treat the patient for something that is not occurring right there and then. So it's very important that you sort it out properly. So that will take some time, a little more time.
So I'm going to end with this. Well, what would you expect the outcome to be if a patient came in with multiple losses of, and one of them being shelter, employment, and family members? And they had all of these losses. If they came into the emergency room and the question is asked, that question, do you want to hurt yourself? Do you want to hurt anyone? And this person tells you, that's not the feeling that I'm having, but I feel so depressed that yes, those thoughts come to me. How is that handled?
Well, in a situation like that, definitely you have to get the social worker involved. Because most of these patients that have nowhere to live, okay, put it for instance, in a time like now it's winter, it's extremely cold. You know, we just ask the person, do you feel like you want to hurt yourself? No. But the problem does not stop there. We need to find out and know where the patient is going after he's discharged. How is his financial situation will be taken care of? Does he have the money to buy his medication? And questions like that. Those are the things as a supervisor I'm concerned about.
And how effective was your institution in, let's say, in 50% to 100% rating? How would you say your hospital, in your experience, was?
Hospital, I would say about 90%.
That's excellent.
Because the thing I like about the administration, if you feel like it's an unsafe environment, they will not want us to send the patient out there before we have some intervention. We have to make sure that the patient is properly discharged. Because you cannot consider a proper discharge to be getting a prescription, see the doctor and walk out. We have to take into consideration the social issues, the family environment, speak to a family member to see how things going at home with the patient and refer the patient to the outpatient clinic.
Well, thank you. I want to thank you for your participation in a Mike's Nurse Talk Show. It's a talk show that we're looking to get funded for, to have more interaction with our nurses out there, to give more insight on how to care for the psychiatric patient that comes into an emergency room or is dealt with out in the field on a nursing level. I want to thank you and end the call, and we'll hope to follow up with you in a Skype session soon to come.
Okay, so have a good day.
Bye-bye. Thank you for sitting in and listening to our psychiatric nursing show with Mr. Smith, and giving the example of what we're tackling most today is schizophrenia and major depressive disorders, and how hospital institutions and how they're handled before they go home. Now in the home, I practice, and I have to tell you, people that are suffering from major depressive disorders clinically experience a lot of financial difficulty in just trying to obtain the needs to prevent them from going into the psychotic state. And I have to tell you, we're doing the best that we can. Looking for funding for shows like this and agencies like mine, we are definitely looking to the public today for more support and making sure that people are not placed in positions where they have to be handled by 911 all the time. It can be prevented by registered nurses, nurses that have had, as Mr. Smith said, great training. I think our schools, our teachers have trained us so well and in our preceptorship for nurses that and doctors that have come together and shown us through orientations and in-services in institutions and outside institutions like I did, and psychiatric prevention. And I want to thank you for coming in. Our next episode on psychiatry, we'll be talking about nurses that when patients come in and they have voices, they are hearing voices in different airs, we say, telling them to hurt themselves, telling them to hurt other people. I want to tell you how we handle those things. So, thank you.